All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Missing Chapters. We are just kind of at the top of the hour, so we'll give everyone a couple minutes to join. While we wait, let's do everyone's favorite webinar activity, which is put in the chat where you are joining from. I am based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where yesterday we had a high of 67, but it also snowed.
What?
Yeah, it's wild, crazy weather right now. Just like all over the place. What about you, Vanessa? Where are you
Well,
joining from?
we had our very first snowfall in Utah a couple weeks ago, and it is bright and sunny today. So,
Love it. I know all the Utahns that I work with are very have very mixed feelings about the lack of snow this year.
yeah, it's kind of sad. I wish I had snow at least once in the fall because I feel like we didn't really get to celebrate December properly with no
Oh, yeah,
snow.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay, we also have Harry from Dallas. Harry, I grew up in the Dallas area. Go Cowboys. Um,
You know, Texas and Tennessee both have really good food. I've been to both states and I've been blown away.
I agree. Yeah, Tennessee I was kind of surprised
Yeah.
um, by how good it is.
Hmm.
But, um, okay, I think let's go ahead and get going, and then people can join as they will. So, like I said, welcome to Missing Chapters. This is a webinar series where we focus on things that aren't always covered in the HR handbooks. But you need to know they're very important. They help you do your job better. Today we have Vanessa Brulotte joining us. She's an employee relations partner at BambooHR, and we're going to talk about conflict resolution. I am very excited about this topic because I know it's something that is not a strength of mine. I totally avoid conflict. And so, Vanessa, I have so much to learn from you, and I know that our audience will as well. Uh, quick, oh, that's not what I wanted. Um, Sorry, we're going a little backwards here. Um, my name is Haley Tilkemeyer. I'm on the marketing team here at Nava Benefits. And part of my job is to get really great information into the hands of our audience. Hence why we have Vanessa here with us today. And then we have Vanessa joining us. Vanessa, do you want to give a quick blurb about who you are, what you do?
Yeah. So, my name is Vanessa Brulotte, and I've worked at Bamboo HR for about 9 years in a lot of different capacities, both in talent acquisition, management, HR business partner, and then in the last couple of years built a centralized function for employee relations across the business. So, a lot of cool things that I've done there. Obviously, I'm a biased cheerleader for for Bamboo HR. And prior to that, I've been an HR team of one, as well as worked in HR in the healthcare industry, and done staffing, and so quite a bit of depth of some HR realm experiences, and have definitely felt dealt with a lot of conflict over the years. So I have some advice.
Great. We cannot wait to hear it. I am going to stop share and just let us chat so that we can have a better conversation. So to get started, I know you built the employee relations function at Bamboo HR. What does that look like day to day? What does your job entail?
Well, I can say that no 2 days in employee relations really look the same. A big part of my role has been building that more centralized function and approach, like I said before. And so we can show up consistently and fairly, especially in those high stakes moments, like investigations, performance challenges, terminations. And day to day, I'm partnering with leaders on everything from coaching through difficult conversations to navigating risk and making thoughtful decisions. And I work directly with employees, listening, addressing their concerns, helping resolve conflict before it escalates. And I often step into situations as that neutral voice, bringing clarity and that sense of calm, which is important in HR when things feel uncertain. And at the end of the day, employee relations, I sometimes say ER. It's not the hospital ER, just employee relations. So if I say ER in this, you know what that means. Uh, it's really about protecting both the people and the organization, making sure we handle those tough moments in a way that's fair, consistent, and just genuinely human.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like it's funny that you're like ER, not emergency room, but it is almost like it's very high stakes. I'm sure
Mhm.
like very emotional, very rewarding. So in a lot of ways, I'm sure it is actually very similar to working in a hospital emergency
Yes,
room.
I actually made that mistake one time. I told a leader, "Oh my gosh, sorry, I'll get to you in a second. I'm dealing with a different ER issue." And he thought I was going to the hospital. And so he checked in with me a few hours later. I'm like, "Are you okay? I know
It's
that
like,
you
why
went to
are
the
you
hospital." I'm like, "Oh,
working?
I'm so sorry."
Love that. Love that. Um, so you have I described this to me before as somewhat of a tough role. What makes it challenging?
Well, I step in when things feel super complex, emotional, and uncertain. And these aren't just processes to manage, they're moments that shape how people experience that trust at work. So my role sits at the intersection of people and accountability. And I partner closely
Mhm.
with leaders to navigate tough conversations with clarity and fairness while also creating that space for those employees to feel heard, supported, and respected. Because as human beings, we all deserve dignity and respect. And so it's about making sure decisions aren't just compliant, but human. And I think what really matters about this role is that these moments often shape how people experience the organization. It's where trust can either be built or broken. So at the
Oh,
core of what
yeah.
I do is just to bring that clarity, the human approach to otherwise really difficult situations, so that people can walk away feeling respected, even though the outcome may be tough.
Yeah. Love that. I feel like that's so important. Dignity as humans, you know.
Mhm.
So you work with leaders a lot. I know you just said, and I know that we always like to trust and think that our leaders are always doing the exact right, perfect thing. But we do see conflict avoidance in leadership a lot. What do you think that looks like in practice?
Yes. Well, it
You're like,
often
where do I
isn't.
start?
I know, yeah, there's so many things to unpack here. Well, it often isn't someone actively avoiding conflict. Sometimes it is. It's usually more subtle than that. It in practice it tends to show up as a delay. A leader notices like maybe a performance issue or some tension on the team, but instead of addressing it early when it's manageable, they put it off on the back burner or hope it resolves itself, and then it really never gets addressed. And it can
Mm,
also show up in how feedback is delivered or not delivered. A leader might hesitate to give direct feedback to a peer or even their own manager because it feels uncomfortable or even risky at times. So they stay quiet
mm,
even when something isn't working. Or with employees, it can look like something, the message to the point where it loses clarity, saying something like, "Hey, you might want to think about this, but overall you're doing great." And the intention is good, but the impact is that person walks away not really understanding what needs to change and probably thinks they're doing really well
right.
from
Yeah.
just saying something as simple as that. And the reality is, most of the time these issues don't go away, they compound. And by the time they finally surface, they're affecting the team, the culture, and the business in a much bigger way.
Yes, totally. Why do you think that leaders do beat around the bush or delay the hard conversation?
It really comes down to I shouldn't be laughing through all this. I just think we all
No,
can
no,
just
no.
like
Yes,
feel
we
the
all can feel
connection
it.
to this.
Yes, yes. No, we do. It's totally, it's a very human thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah.
exactly. And I think we've all seen this, and we've all done it ourselves too. So I think that's why it's like we can all connect to this topic.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think it really comes down to whether it's a will issue or a skill issue. And a lot of people assume it's about courage, that leaders just don't want to have hard conversations. And sometimes that's true, but more often it's actually a skill gap. It's not that they're unwilling, it's that they don't feel confident in how to do it well. And so,
Mhm.
because the reality is, not every situation is the same. There's no one size fits all script for feedback or conflict. And when leaders don't have the tools or language, they default to softening the message or avoiding it altogether. For example, instead of being more clear and specific, a leader might say, you need to be more professional, which is open to interpretation, versus using clear descriptors, so descriptions versus descriptors, saying instead, in yesterday's meeting, there were a few moments where you interrupted the client and it affected how we showed up as a team. And unfortunately, that experience impacted their trust in us, and they've decided not to move forward with us anymore. Moving forward, I need you to be more mindful in client conversations and ensure we're showing up professionally in these moments. Way
Yeah.
different than just saying you were not professional. They now know exactly what they did wrong,
Mm.
the impact, expectation moving forward, and that level of clarity really creates that alignment and actually gives someone that path to
Um,
improve. And another big one is what I call ruinous empathy. I know we'll hit on this a bit later in this conversation,
mm,
but where a leader generally cares about the person but avoids being fully honest because they don't want to hurt them. So the feedback gets softened or diluted with things like you're just doing great overall without ever clearly addressing that real issue. And while the intention is good,
mm,
the impact is the employee walks away confused, blindsided later when that issue gets escalated.
yeah. No, I think that's so important. And something that I live by, especially as, well, not live by in this, I've already admitted I'm not always great about conflict, but, and as someone who works in communications, just clarity is kind.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of what you're saying, and like not leaving it up to like be more professional, so relative, you
Yeah.
know, people would define that in different ways. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
love that.
and it's true because over time it can create frustration on both sides. Like leaders may start
Yeah.
to build resentment because the behavior isn't changing, and then employees may develop a false sense of how they're performing, reinforcing the problem instead of resolving it. And so when leaders beat around that bush, it feels kinder in the moment, but down the line, it creates more hurt ultimately. Um,
Hmm.
but like we were talking about before, I think I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, is like we all run into this. Like conflict is something that everybody runs into, and it's a human challenge. Yeah, like I think
Yes,
you even called that
totally.
out. Like
Yeah.
this is human,
Yeah.
and everyone experiences it. And so oh yeah, I had an example that I was going to share with you. That back in college, I think about conflict. That there was a situation that stuck with me with a professor. We were in a classroom, and the professor asked us, "What do you think of when I say conflict? Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?" And everyone's just saying like hard, difficult, challenging, sad, whatever it is. They're using words. There was somebody in
Uh-huh.
that class that decided to just come up with an entire visual. And they were like, it's like sliding down a water slide, but it's razor sharp. So on the way down, you're getting nicked by razors, and then you like land in a pool of lemon juice. And I never forgot that description because uh, sometimes when we think about conflict, we're like, I want to avoid that. I don't want to touch it because it
Yeah,
is a painful thing, because that's the mindset that naturally our amygdala is trying to protect us from. So, but and I know we'll get into
yeah,
that too, but it's just like it's just so interesting that conflict can be scary because that's kind of what's built inside of our minds, but it doesn't
totally.
need to be that way.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I want to touch on something that you were just talking about, the amygdala's response. And I know that like with conflict, our bodies have a physiological response to it. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So this is what actually makes conflict feel so uncomfortable. So when we approach conflict, especially if it feels tense or uncertain, our brain can interpret it as a threat. The amygdala, our brain's threat detector, kicks in and can trigger what's often called an amygdala hijack. And that's when it activates the fight or flight response and essentially overrides that prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's responsible for that rational thinking, problem solving, and communication. So instead of
Mm,
responding thoughtfully, we're more likely to have a reaction. We might get defensive, shut down, avoid the conversation altogether, or just come in too strong, frankly. And the
Mhm.
key insight is that this reaction is automatic. It's not a character flaw, it's biology. And once
Mhm.
you understand that, you can start to slow it down and create space to respond more intentionally rather than to react. And this fight or flight
Yeah.
response doesn't just happen when we're caught off guard. Like it can happen even when we know a conversation's coming. Like if someone gives you unexpected feedback in a meeting, your brain can register that as a threat instantly, and that's the classic caught off guard moment. But even if you're planning a difficult conversation all day, your brain can still anticipate risk, rejection, conflict, being wrong, and trigger that response the same way. So, for
Mhm.
example, I thought about this, you might rehearse what you're going to say to a colleague giving feedback and feel calm beforehand. And then in the moment you start the conversation, your heart rate spikes, your thoughts get fuzzy, and suddenly you're either softening your message or getting more reactive than you intended. That's
Mhm.
your amygdala stepping in, trying to protect you, even when there's no real danger.
Right. Yeah. No, I feel that. I know that I do that. I know that my heart starts racing. I can always feel my face like flushing.
Yes.
And I'm like, I know it's very much a real like physiological response. Um, Crazy what our bodies do.
Oh, yeah.
So what are, if you know that this is like a response, what are some practical ways to regulate yourself before entering those hard conversations?
Yes. Well, if first regulate. If your heart rate starts to spike, that's your amygdala kicking in, like we've talked about. So
Hmm.
come back to your breath. It sounds so simple. It's a simple technique,
Yeah.
4 counts in, 4 counts out. It sounds basic, but it's one of the fastest way to calm your nervous system
Uh-huh.
and bring your thinking back online. And you can use that
Hmm.
not just before the conversation, but during too. And the second thing you can do is like ground yourself in what you can control. You can't
Hmm.
control how the other person reacts. You can only control how you show up and respond. And that mindset
Hmm.
alone can really take that pressure off. And
Yeah.
the third thing is going with curiosity instead of certainty. Like if your goal is to understand, not just to be right, that whole tone of that conversation changes. So one practical way to do that is to write things down ahead of time. I do this all the time. So
Hmm.
write it down. Get the thoughts out of your head and onto paper so you can separate the facts from the assumptions that you have on the situation. Um, and sometimes
Hmm.
utilizing frameworks can be really helpful with this too. So there's a one of them is the SBI framework. I don't know if you've utilized or heard of that one before.
It sounds familiar, but I would love for you to
Yeah, yeah.
explain.
I this one has definitely saved me a couple times as just a really great method. So these are two methods that I've used the most or coached on the most. But the SBI framework is situation, behavior, impact. So you outline what happened, what you observed, and then the impact it had. Then you can enter in the conversation with something like, here's what I'm seeing. What am I missing? And that opens the door
Hmm.
instead of shutting it because you're seeking to understand the context there.
Yeah.
And then if your context is right, it's like, okay, well, I just want to make sure you understand what impact this had. Let's create a goal together to figure out what the future should look like. And another approach is to name your interpretation. You can just go into it because, again, conflict can look different.
Uh-huh.
That SBI framework might not be the right one for the conflict you have. And so, if it's naming your interpretation, it's, hey, here are the facts and what I'm noticing. And here's the story I'm telling myself because of these observations and
Hmm.
facts. Could you help me understand your perspective? And that opens it
Hmm.
up because you're staying curious. You're like, hey, I'm not coming in with any conclusions. I'm telling you what my perception is of like what this is and the story I'm telling
Yeah.
myself. Am I right? Like, or am I missing certain facts? Like, help
Yeah.
me. And it
Yeah.
opens up for that collaboration. And they lower defensiveness, creates psychological safety and turns that
Hmm.
conversation into that shared problem solving moment instead of a confrontation.
Yeah. I feel like one thing that you said really sticks out. And it's go into it. Are you going into it to seek to understand or to try to be right? And
Mhm.
I feel like that's a reminder that we all probably need in professional conflict and personal conflict.
Mhm.
It's so important to just like kind of ground yourself in in that before you go into a tough conversation.
Yeah, and sometimes I've done this before. This is another like kind of side tip that I just thought of
Mm,
after you were saying that is sometimes we're going into a conversation and we're very nervous about what it's going to do to the relationship. Or like
mm,
you're just nervous altogether. It is okay to break the walls down in that conversation to just say, I want to call it the elephant in the room. I'm actually really nervous to talk to you because I do care about a relationship so much, but it's because I care so much that I am having this conversation with you. And what I found is
yeah,
that sometimes it shows that vulnerability and opens up their own vulnerability. And like a second piece of advice I would have is if you are going to go into a conversation, give them a heads up. Sometimes people have a hard time responding well if they don't know what's coming. And
yeah,
so I did this with an executive one time where I went into their office and I said, "Hey, I just need to let you know there's something that I've been kind of noticing and experiencing with you. I need to have a conversation, but I'm going to set up some time and we can talk more about it then." And they were like, "Oh my gosh, like what's going on?" And I said, "You know what? I really prefer if we have a conversation, but I just want to make sure you had a heads up."
yeah.
Conversation went flawlessly. And because I was able to give them a chance to gather their thoughts,
Mm,
come in with the right mindset. And then we get in there and I opened it up with like, I want to call it the elephant in the room. I am very intimidated by you. I'm very nervous for this conversation. And the response was so amazing because they said, you know what? I get that a lot. And I don't realize that that's the perception I give until recently when people have given me this feedback. And it was just eye-opening. I'm
uh,
like, I have been dehumanizing this person because of my own experiences and my own lens. I know we're going to talk about more of that later, but
yeah.
it's like my own experiences and my own lens. And I wasn't allowing growth from my own lens. And
Mm,
seeing them in a different light, and it really helped build our relationship. So anyway, I'll stop on that
yeah.
tangent because I get really excited about this topic.
No, I actually I think this leads really well into the next question, which is about viewing situations through like a narrator's lens. And
Mhm.
you just touched on that a little bit, but I would love to unpack that more.
Ooh, yes. I'm really excited because there's something we talked about in our prep call that I'm like really excited to hit on. So a lot of time conflict is driven by a single point of view. And as a leader, you
Mm,
might only have your perspective or secondhand feedback about someone else. And as an employee, you're also seeing the situation from your own lens. And either way, it's incomplete. You don't
mm.
have the full story. And it actually reminds me of the Fourth Wing series. I don't know if we have any book lovers in the chat. But but
Vanessa and I really
yes.
bonded over this on our prep call for anyone wondering.
Yes. Well, the author, Rebecca Yarros, writes it entirely in first person. So as readers, we only know what the main character, Violet, knows. And we experience everything through her lens, which means we're missing
Mm,
those key pieces of what's really happening to her and what the experiences of others are happening around her. We don't know other conversations that are happening. We don't know the full story. We only see what she sees.
mm,
And so conflict at work like works that same way with that singular lens. And when we stay in that single perspective, we're reacting to a partial story. But when we pause, we zoom out and we seek other perspectives, we start to see that full picture, the full map. And that's where better decisions and real resolutions happen.
yeah. I love that. And I think it makes so much sense when you think about, yeah, I don't have the context that that other person has. Like,
Mhm,
of course, I'm going into this with limited understanding.
mhm.
Um, so you have talked about like when we are viewing things through the narrator's lens, through our own lens, a lot of times our brains seek to fill in the gaps with assumptions. Why is that so dangerous?
Yes. Kind of going back to that partial story piece, and
Hmm.
it's natural for our brains to really fill in those gaps with the information that we already have in our storage base.
Hmm.
And our brain is constantly trying to make sense of the world quickly, and it doesn't like uncertainty. So when we don't have all the facts, it uses those past experiences, your own biases, and pattern recognition to really complete that story for us. And the problem is that these stories often feel just as real as facts. That's the scary part. So
Mhm.
that's what makes it dangerous. We're no longer reacting to what actually happened. We're reacting to the meaning that we've assigned to it. And that
Mhm.
meaning is often skewed towards threat. And our brain is wired to protect us. So it tends to assume negative intent. They're being disrespectful. They don't care. They went around me on purpose. You see this in reality TV all the time. It's like the best in class example, like it's the master class. If you ever watch reality TV, go look at the way that they interact in the drama, even if the producers are putting it together. Like, watch
Yeah.
it and how they don't communicate with each other. And so many assumptions are made. Nobody focuses on the facts. And so it's very,
Mm.
very interesting. Um, but our behavior follows the story, and we might get defensive, avoid the person, escalate the situation, all based on something we don't actually know to be true. So the risk isn't just that we're wrong, it's that we act on those assumptions as if they're facts, and how the small misunderstandings turn into much bigger conflict where it's an
Mhm.
eruption. And that the shift is learning to catch that moment and say, what do I actually know and what am I missing?
Mhm.
So take that pause, and that creates that space for a much more productive conversation. So when you're going back to kind of the tips I was talking about earlier, when you're writing it down, do that. What I do sometimes, what's helpful is write down everything, all the emotions, everything, write out everything, and then say, okay, where are the facts? And then pull those out. And then when you
Mhm.
have the list of facts, if it's a lot of facts, put them into themes. What are the themes that you're seeing? That breaks it down. So,
Uh,
like, as an example, with that executive I had feedback for, I did that. I had like a whiteboard full of all the different things going on, and I realized a lot of the things that I thought were facts were assumptions. And then I pulled out the
mhm.
facts, I created three different themes, and then by doing all the steps I did, and then walking that person through all the themes, we were able to very clearly identify how we can move forward and partner and collaborate together. And so it's a really good tool to use.
Mhm. I love that. I are there any other like tactical tools to be able to stop assumptions before they escalate that you have?
Yes. Yes. When I coach people, I start with like two simple checks. Do you actually have all the facts? And have you actively sought out the other person's perspective or response? And most of the time, the answer is no.
Mhm.
And that's where that opportunity is. I think, because we've already talked about gathering all the facts, but have you given the other person a chance to respond before you come to your conclusions? And
Mhm.
I think this is a really great tip for leaders, because that can be so easy to do. Is like, oh well, like as an example, like somebody downloaded something that they shouldn't, or they're working a program that isn't approved, and so they're doing
Uh,
things they shouldn't, and they need to get in trouble. And it's like, okay, but what if there's actually like a reasonable explanation?
uh-huh.
Or if somebody doesn't show up to work, it's like, oh, job abandonment. Okay, no, did you reach out to them to see if they're okay? you
Check
know
on
there there could be a life at stake. Let's check
them.
on them. But I think a helpful way to think about this is the parable of the blind men and the elephant. I love this parable. I
Mhm.
reference this all the time, but it's each person is touching a different part of the elephant to describe what it is. So one feels the trunk and says it's a snake. Another feels the leg and says it's a tree. And they're all
Uh,
confident, but they're all incomplete. So that's exactly what those assumptions are. We're holding on to one piece of that story and treating it like that entire truth. So
mhm.
stopping assumptions really means slowing down, testing your story before you act
Mhm.
on it. And I encourage people to say, like, here's what I'm seeing. Here's the story I'm telling you myself. Can you help me understand your perspective? Go back to that method and try to
Mhm.
understand the real truth, and turn that assumption into questions. And you'll come out on top from that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I slow down, I think also is going to stick with me.
Hmm.
Just slow down,
Yeah.
stop, think. Um, I think that's great.
You can add me to your quote
Uh,
wall. That's
I know. I'm gonna put a post-it on my desktop that says slow
yeah.
down.
Yes.
Um, okay, so another thing that I know that you are very passionate about is radical candor. How
Hmm.
would you define that?
Yes, I would tell people if you've never read Kim Scott's book, Radical Candor, do it. It is one of my staples in my library. But
Mm-hmm.
in the book, Kim describes feedback across four different quadrants. There's radical candor, ruinous empathy, obnoxious aggression, and manipulative insincerity. And so radical candor sits in that sweet spot. It's where you care personally and challenge directly. It means you're willing to say the hard thing, but you do it because you genuinely care about the person and their success.
Mm-hmm.
So, where we often get stuck is leaning too far one way. So, we either avoid the conversation to be nice, that's ruinous empathy, or we're blunt without care, which comes across as obnoxious aggression. Radical
Mm-hmm.
candor is about balancing both. And so for me, it's not just about giving direct feedback, it's about giving clear, honest feedback in a way that shows that respect and investment in the other person. So it's saying, I care enough to not let this go unspoken. So going back to the tips of entering in a conflict situation, calling this out, be like, I care
Uh-huh.
about you. And hey, I'm nervous to have this conversation, but I care about you enough to not let this slide, because
Yeah.
I want you to be successful. If you don't want somebody to be successful, don't talk to them. Like,
That's a good rule of thumb.
yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. What would you say is the difference between being direct in your candor and being just a jerk?
Yes, and I think sometimes this gets convoluted with people because they're like, I'm not being a jerk. Like, a leader might say, like, I want to just say, like, what the heck were you thinking? And get upset with somebody. I'm like, oh, there's a
Mhm.
more tactful way to approach this. Um,
Oh, let's. Yeah.
I think that's exactly how I said it too. but, but being direct means you're clear, specific, focused on that problem, and you're
Hmm.
grounding your feedback in facts and impact, and your intent is to help move things forward and using those methods we talked about. And being a jerk is what Kim Scott calls the obnoxious aggression, is when that same message becomes personal. You're no longer
Hmm.
focused on the work, you're focused on the person. And so it's kind my boss always says, like, she's like, be hard on the problem, not the person.
Oh, I
And
love
I
that.
love that feedback
Yeah.
because it's like
Hmm.
it's such a cool principle to live off of.
Hmm.
Because if you're hard on the problem, you're opening up for collaboration and people want to continue to work with
Hmm.
you, build trust. If you're
Yeah.
hard on a person and like them personally, yeah, walls get built, there's distrust,
Hmm.
it hurts morale.
Yeah.
And some of the emotions can take over, and that sounds like you're careless, you always drop the ball, that's a mess, do you even know what you're
Hmm.
doing? That's not productive.
Yeah.
And so what the difference isn't whether the message is hard, it's how it's delivered and where it's aimed. So direct feedback targets behavior and outcomes. Being a jerk is targeting that person personally. And a
Hmm.
gut check is, am I trying to help this person succeed or just vent my frustration?
Right.
So
That's a great gut check. Yeah.
yeah, when you're planning that conversation, do that gut check. What is my
Yeah.
approach? What am I trying to do here? And that usually tells you which side of the line that you're kind of on.
Yeah. That's awesome. Love a good gut check.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, so we've been talking a lot about sort of conflict from a leadership perspective, but I want to make sure that we also touch on crucial conversations in different directions, whether that's upward or on a peer level. So, and we're going to start off with a leadership-based question, but how can leaders create psychological safety so that employees feel comfortable disagreeing, whether it is with their leaders or with their peers?
Yes. It's a great question. And it really comes down to trust and how leaders show
Hmm.
up in those moments of tension. Psychological safety isn't built by saying you can disagree. It's built by how you respond when somebody actually does. And so leaders
Hmm.
create that safety by modeling open communication and curiosity. So when you give feedback or hear a different perspective, pause, seek to understand instead of immediately correcting or defending, and ask those questions. What am I missing? Can you walk me through what
Hmm.
you're seeing? What signals that input is valued, not punished? So
Hmm.
empathy is a big part of this too. Recognizing that speaking up can feel risky. When someone does take that risk, how you respond matters. If you shut it down, people won't do it again, and you're no longer a safe space. If you
Yeah.
acknowledge it and engage with it, you build trust. And over time, it's those small moments, listening, asking, not reacting defensively, that create a culture where people feel safe enough to disagree, which ultimately leads to better decisions. Or if you're a leader, who, you're in a meeting, someone says something inappropriate, and you see somebody who's, kind of disengaged, and you're like, hey, let's not focus on that. We want to keep this conversation professional. Let's redirect to this conversation. Then you can approach that conflict afterwards with those two individuals. But you need to be able to manage the room as a leader when you're in those in moments and redirect the conversation, because what you're doing is you are stating what's tolerated and what's not, but still managing that conflict.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that's awesome. What would you say, if someone, and I think you gave us a great example when you were talking about giving your exec feedback, but what are some ways that you can tactfully disagree with leadership? I know it's like scary for all of us.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Even for me sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Again, we
I
are all human,
we're human. Yes.
Yeah.
It can feel really intimidating to disagree with senior leadership, and that's
Mhm.
completely normal, like we're saying, and human. And the key is to approach it as a strategic partner, not as opposition. So start
Mhm.
by being constructive and solution oriented. Don't just point
Mhm.
out what you disagree with, bring an alternative. Leaders are much more
Mhm.
receptive when you're helping move the business forward, not just
Mhm.
critiquing it. And so it's important to understand what matters to them. What are their goals? What KPIs are they
Mhm.
focused on? Then frame your perspective in that context. When you speak their language and connect your input to what they care about, you're going to find so much more, resolvement from the things that you're bringing forward, because you are on their level at that point.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say is approach it with those tips.
Yeah. I love that, getting on their level. And I'm not to compare leadership to toddlers, but I have small children. And so I find that I am constantly physically getting on their level,
Mhm.
and trying to relate to them in a way that's going to make sense and make them want to do what I want
Yes.
them to do.
Yes.
So it's
Well,
almost like, yeah, no, go ahead.
no, I love that though, because also there's still the element of be curious. Come in with this
Yes.
approach and this strategic partnership, but get curious, because they might have a lens that you don't know or you can't see.
Mhm.
Just like reverse, they don't know things that you know. And so
Yeah.
go in there with these things in mind as that strategic partner in the solutions and like things that you're seeing and tied to everything, but saying, am I missing anything? What are you
Hmm.
seeing? And then sometimes if they give feedback back, you can say, oh, yeah, no, here's how it's tied to this. And then it becomes a
Hmm.
collaborative effort with more information so they can make a more informed decision.
Yeah. Love that. We can all make more informed decisions.
Yeah, yes.
It's a win for everyone.
Yes.
Um, okay, so let's move to practical takeaways. Also, I'm so sorry, y'all, if you can hear it. A construction truck just like pulled up outside of my window. Things that you can't plan for when you're hosting webinars. So sorry if y'all can hear that and if it's distracting. Um, but let's move to some practical takeaways that everyone can um, go forth and manage their conflict. So if someone listening today is a conflict avoider, I'll raise my hand. What's one mindset shift you would tell them that they should make in order to overcome that?
If you tend to avoid conflict, the biggest mindset shift I'd offer is you're not responsible for controlling the outcome. You're responsible
Mm-hmm.
for how you show up. And you can't control how someone else reacts, but you can control your response. And I think I like to think of it as holding the remote to your own emotions. don't hand that over to somebody else. You have full control over your remote. So you're responsible for
Yes.
how you show up. Take your remote,
Uh,
hold on to it. Keep it secret, keep it safe, as Gandalf would say. Um, and, and alongside that, shift from avoidance to curiosity. Instead of
mhm.
thinking this is going to go badly, ask what might I be missing here? Focus on the facts, separate out your assumptions, and go in with the intent to understand, not to be understood. Because when you make that shift
Mhm.
from control to ownership and fear to curiosity, conflict becomes a conversation, not something to avoid.
Conflict becomes a conversation. Also, going to put that as a
Yeah.
post-it on my desktop. That's awesome. That's awesome. I also love the imagery of the remote because it's like, okay, I can turn the volume up, I can turn
Yep.
it down, I can go from Netflix to Disney Plus. I am
Yeah.
in charge.
Exactly.
Love that. Okay, and something that I know everyone will be pumped to talk about is how you can use AI in conflict. So you have mentioned partnering with AI to fill in knowledge gaps.
Mhm.
How can we, what are some AI tools that we can be using to help manage these types of conversations?
Oh man. Yeah, because AI is like at our fingertips now. There's so many things out
Hmm.
there, even just as simple as ChatGPT. Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
things, Gemini, and AI can be a really powerful thought partner when you're preparing for a
Hmm.
crucial conversation. It helps you slow down, organize your thinking, and really approach the conversation more intentionally. So, for example, you can use AI to structure your message. Like you might say, here's the situation, help me frame this with the SBI situation behavior impact model with empathy for a
Uh-huh.
senior leader. And that helps you separate the facts from emotion and get clear on what you actually want to say because you can list
Hmm.
all of it out. Okay, help me frame this, help me make it empathetic, and get
Yeah.
curious. You can also use it to pressure test your approach and ask, like, okay, here's how I'm about to approach this. How might this land? Or what am I missing? Or even, can you give
Uh-huh.
me a more constructive way to phrase this? And it can help you shift from reactive language to something more clear, calm, solution oriented. I have
Mm-hmm.
done this because, hey, let's be honest, we're all human beings. I have moments where I'm like, okay, my emotions are definitely getting the best of me, and I think I'm approaching this the right way, but I want to pressure test myself and say,
Yes.
hey, is this going to land like I'm a reasonable partner? No? Okay, I will fix this.
Okay,
And
great.
and ask it. Sometimes AI tends to be really agreeable, and so ask it to play that devil's advocate role for you and say, no, I need you to push back on me. Is this actually
Hmm.
accurate? And so then if you frame it that way, you can get a lot more feedback. And it's great for that perspective taking. You can ask AI to role play the other person's point of view, which helps you anticipate reactions and go in more
Yeah.
prepared. So it's not about replacing that human side of the conversation. It's about helping you show up
Hmm.
a lot more thoughtful, clear, and grounded when it matters the most.
Yeah, totally. Just like preparing. I love the role playing idea. That's so smart. So then you can just maybe like just helps you better prepare for what their reaction might be. Love
Yeah.
that. Um, do you have a favorite AI tool? Like, are you usually doing it with ChatGPT?
Yes,
And
I
if
do love
yeah.
ChatGPT and Gemini is great as well.
Uh-huh.
But keep an eye out because we're kind of in that age of AI is not just developing now, that there's a ton of companies out there with software that are being built
Yeah.
for this very thing. And kind of keep an eye out for kind of the
Mm,
resources that are going to become available. And when you think about in your organizations, how do you want to help encourage people to have crucial conversations, be open, and have good
mhm.
feedback models? How can you utilize AI as that thought partner? And there might be softwares coming available that can
Coming.
help with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Love that. Well, awesome, Vanessa. That is the end of my questions. Is there anything else that you want to impart to this crew?
Yeah, I think one of my final thoughts that I think is relevant to most people is take care of your mental health. I think about this a lot,
Mm,
and A lot of us can get into doom scrolling when we want to avoid conflict. We go somewhere else to get a, a quick, you
Yes.
know, moment
Yes.
of just like, yeah, anyway, but doom scrolling, it puts your amygdala into hyperdrive, and that's going to impact your ability to go into any conversation being calm.
Mhm.
And so limit yourself, create boundaries for yourself because your brain is precious, your remote is precious,
Your brain
and
is precious.
keep it secret, keep it safe. But like set
Yes.
those boundaries and take care of yourself because you matter.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was lovely.
And hearts.
Lovely way to end. Yes, seriously. Um, okay, well, I'm gonna talk about like two more things, and I'm gonna give everyone here an opportunity to drop a question in the chat for Vanessa if you do have any. But let me real quick. I'm gonna go back to. I'm gonna reshare here. And while you're dropping questions in the chat, if you have any, I want to invite you all to our annual summit, Fix Healthcare Live. It is going to be held in San Francisco on April 29th. We're bringing in a bunch of people leaders, benefits leaders. We'll have really great sessions on it. It'll mostly be focused on the future of benefits, but we'll also have sessions on how to align with executive leadership goals, things that will be super relevant to you and your roles in person in San Francisco, but we are also hosting a virtual option as well. And I am going to drop the link to register in the chat here. And then the next thing that I want to invite you to is we have a Slack community called Change Agents, full of HR and people leaders who are all kind of navigating the same things. So it's a great place to go connect, to get advice. People will drop. We had a really big thread in there the other day about everyone's favorite leave software. So it could be anything from software advice, or maybe, back to our conversation today, I need to give feedback to this exec and I really want advice on the best way to approach it. You can go to that community to connect and get advice. Um, and I think that is all I have. If no one, it looks like all of our questions were, one question was in the Q&A about if the recording will be sent out, and I will send out a recording after we're done. But that is all we have. And I want to thank you so much for joining us, Vanessa. It was so enlightening. I know that I am going away from this conversation with some really great tools to handle conflict in my life. So we appreciate, I'm going to speak for everyone here. We appreciate you so much for sharing your insights.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the
Yeah,
opportunity. It's been fun to chat with you.
yes, yes. All right. Well, everyone, that's all we got. Go forth and manage your conflict.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Bye.